So these are the best budget decks in the game, and before I start, I'm going to give you a quick little bonus deck, because I tried to only include one deck per class, so I didn't include Dragon Hunter, but you can replace Dragonbane with like a tracking or something, Rottenness Drake with an Evasive Worm, if you want. That's this dragon, so you still have Dragon Synergy, and it can be decent removal as well. It is fairly weaker, and if you can afford the solo adventure, I would highly recommend it, but this is how you would make the deck more budget. Dragonbane for tracking, Evasive Worm for Rottenness Drake. But anyway, now that that's out of the way, basically how this is going to work is I'm just going to give you the 5 best budget decks in the game, in my opinion. And they're not even just the best budget decks in the game, but some of them are some of the best decks in the game. Every single one of the decks on this list I have played, I have a positive win rate with, in Legend, except for one, but that's just a personal playstyle thing, and that's just because I've only played it like 5 times, and even that one I have a positive win rate with, so still a very, very good deck. I'm 3-2 with it, just if you're wondering. So I would highly recommend all of these decks. They all have one legendary, which means that it's easy to replace a lot of the time, but if you want to fully commit to the deck to make it just a little bit more powerful, you only really need one legendary to do it, and a lot of the time the legendaries are pretty well used. For example, if you were to commit to Dragon Hunter, Dragonbane is used in every single Hunter deck, and that's just another little quick example for you. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you have any decks that you think I should include on here or look at for my next video, just to test out to potentially see where it falls on this list, please let me know. I'd be happy to check them out, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Oh yeah, and if there's anything I can do to improve the content for you guys, please let me know. I want to be as good as I possibly can for you. But if you already like my content, feel free to subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoy the games. So, the best budget deck in the game is Face Hunter. I don't know if you guys are surprised by this or not. Maybe I'm a little bit biased by the fact that I love this deck, but honestly, it's the deck that got me to Legend this season fairly quickly. The games are fast. My win rate with it was like 66, 67%, and getting to Legend, that was once it got to Legend. Going to Legend, it was at a 74% win rate over the course of about 30 plus games, and it's just really, really good. You may be wondering about the 2 legendaries. I'll tell you the replacements because I don't want to accidentally change my decks and then forget to change them back. Basically, the Kobold Geomancer fulfills the same rule as Thalnos. The card draw isn't super important. In fact, low-key, I'll just make the replacement right now. That's how confident I am that this is a good replacement. Like, the card draw is nice, and if you do play a Machnathal Lion and you have that Death Rattle on the board, or you need some card draw because you don't have any damage, there are a few niche situations in which it could be better, but honestly, it's just not. Dragonbane, on the other hand, can be replaced, is a fairly important card of the deck, I will admit, so this is what the final build should look like. But if you want to get rid of it because you don't have the dust, you could put in another Unleash the Hounds, you could put in an extra secret, maybe instead of Misdirection you can throw in a freeze trap in there, or you could run another tracking, or theoretically, I actually had somebody ask me why I don't run a Wolf Rider for some extra charge. You can run a Wolf Rider for a little bit of extra charge burst damage if you want as well. All of these work perfectly fine. You can run another Lion, but you don't really need more than one because you don't have too many Death Rattle cards in the deck. And personally, I don't like drawing it too often with the Scavenger's Ingenuity. A lot of the time, I like using that to play a Phase Stalker as a pretty decent minion, but it's up to you. A Lion is also a viable choice. Let's jump into the next deck. Okay, so Murloc Paladin is the next best budget deck in the game, and it has a legendary, it has the Murgle, but you can replace that with the Toxfin if you want. This deck basically runs by playing one of your 6 1-drops at the beginning of the game, then playing any of your 7 2-drop, or 9 2-drops, sorry, that's math, that's counting. Turn 3, it's either Snowball or Get Resources. Then turn 4, it's Pump Even More. Or if you're playing against Demon Hunter, try to reclaim the board. Then turn 5 is Scale Lord, and I will get to this card in a second. And then after that, it is Horde Pillager and whatever other Murlocs you have to re-equip your Underlight Angling Rod, because it's one of the best cards in the game. And then near the end of the game, you want to play Murloc War Leader as well to finish them off. You can play him early for like a lot of tempo if you don't have another turn 3 play. It's just if you have a choice between this, or this, like say you have 3 3-drops in your hand, I'd go with one of the other 2 first. For the Scale Lord, this card's very important to the deck. Imagine turn 5. It's not their turn 5 yet, it's your turn 5. You want to play, boom, Scale Lord. Give all your Murlocs Divine Shield, and say a Warlock or a Priest goes, boom, board wipe. And, like, Crazed Netherwing or something like that. It doesn't happen, right? So it's fairly important, and you can value trade in with the Divine Shield and not lose anything. Oh, but if you absolutely can't play it, I would highly recommend the Solo Adventure, by the way. To anybody who's thinking about getting it, just thinking about the cards in here just really quick, like Risky Skipper is meta-defining, Scale Lord makes this deck viable, or more viable, Rottenest Drake is crazy, Mana Saber, the Fellwing, or the Crazed Fellwing, or whatever, there are a ton of good cards, not important. Point is, if you don't have him, that's okay. You can run Hammer of Wrath, potentially for some cycle and damage, but I personally would recommend Blessing of Kings, and or True Silver Champion, sorry, that's the wrong direction, to give yourself a little more damage. And yeah, that is a Murloc Paladin. The next best budget deck was actually somewhat of a surprise to me, I'm not going to lie. I think that this deck is very fast and very strong, and it runs the Anchor, and you'll see a recurring theme with this. A lot of these decks have one legendary, so if you do have the Dust to craft one, I would recommend it. But if you don't have the Anchor, just a quick thing, you can replace it with the Livewire Lance. It doesn't draw you cards necessarily, but it is a 3-mana weapon that generates you more resources, so it's still pretty nice. But other than that, like, it's turn 1, Sky Raider, very easy play, or the Gnarg, if you don't have any other turn 1 play. Turn 2, Bloodsail Raider, you can. Sometimes I get greedy and try to save it with a weapon, but if you need the tempo because you know that they'll outpace you late game, sometimes you just gotta play it. Or, especially if you have a Brigand in hand, then Brigand in hand. Not, sorry. But then you want to play this. If you don't want to play this and you have Corsair Cash in hand, you can get away with playing Corsair Cash, playing the weapon turn 3, and then playing the Bloodsail Raider turn 4, but that's a bit greedy. Turn 3 is ideally a weapon, or the Sky Barge. South Sea Captain's fine, actually, if you already have minions on board. And then, obviously, you just want to kind of curve out and finish them off with Mortal Strike, potentially Arcanite Reaper, and re-equip your weapons with Horde Pillager. The deck actually is a little more skill-based, in my opinion, than other decks, because you don't have minions, and you need to use charges of your weapon responsibly, so that way you don't want to trade into minions too many times, but sometimes you'll be forced to, and you need to, like, manage that and know when to play some things, because you actually aren't super minion heavy, which is a little bit weird. But overall, it's still a very good budget deck. It'll take a little bit of a learning curve, because it's a deck not a lot of people have played before or seen played before, so just keep that in mind if your first game or two, you're like learning the ropes. So this deck is actually near the bottom, and it's weird, right? This deck also has one legendary, following that theme, but the deck is very, very good, and when it wins super hard. Like, it's almost unbeatable. But when it loses, it feels so bad, because normally you lose without even being able to really play anything. So you want to do with this is hard mulligan for your ramp with Wild Growth or Overgrowth. If you don't have Rising Winds was given in the first wing, right? Or actually, maybe it was for free. So everyone should have Rising Winds. But if you don't have Ysera, you can replace Ysera with some sort of like early-ish game removal, like Bees or something that gets you some minions on the board, can deal with an early threat or two, or maybe a Swipe, or another Wild Growth, although that's a bit greedy, or another Moonfire if you want. Just, it becomes a lot more reliant on the exotic Mount Seller combo, but and you give up a late game win condition. Like, this is a really, really good card late game when you have very few cards left in your deck because you've drawn a ton. Basically, you want a hard mulligan for these two things, as I said, but also Fungal Fortunes. To draw 3 cards for 2 mana is insane. And you just want to cycle through your deck as quickly as you can with things like Rising Winds as well, and Wrath, to try to get to the Mount Seller, or the Glowfly Swarm, and then pop off turn 5 or 7, or whenever you get that much mana, because you can ramp up. I will say that the deck, the only reason why it's this low on the list is because it can be fairly inconsistent, and when you lose, it feels horrible. But it's definitely something I would give a shot. So the last deck on this list is Zoolock, and the reason why I put it last is because I personally have just not had the most success with it. I'm currently like 3-2 with it, so it's not awful, but it's a small sample size, and I feel like the deck is very weak if you don't get an Imprisoned Scrap Imp really, really early on. I think that the draw package is super powerful, but you need to have Hand of Gul'dan and one of these 2 cards in your hand, which is a lot of times not the most consistent thing. Like, you could sometimes have one, but having both is a little bit iffy. And honestly, I don't know. Like, Spell Druid, I think, is a little inconsistent, but you have 4 or 5 turns, or maybe up to like 6 or 7 turns, depending on when you get ramp, to hit your win condition. And up until then, you have some card draw and some decent removal. This deck, if you don't have Scrap Imp turn 2, maybe turn 3, like, you're just going to get outvalued. Like, this deck, you have a shorter time to draw those win conditions, and the way that you draw cards is more niche. Although more powerful, it is more niche. And a little bit more rare to come by because it's only like one card in combination with another. So overall, I think the deck is still fine. I think the deck is definitely playable. If you need to take out Zephyrus, put in the Augmented Merchant. And if you need to take out Frenzied Fellwing, fun fact, if you get Frenzied Fellwing to 1 mana, it triggers with the Magic Carpet, by the way. But if you feel the need to replace it with something else, I've seen some people run the Thrasher, actually, or some Lackeys in their build and change it a little bit and try to run a couple of other things. So it's really up to you. I might try the Thrasher, because you taking damage doesn't matter. You just try to do as much damage to them as you possibly can. And you really have no turn 3 play, so having a couple of these dudes in there as 4/5s for 3 could be pretty nice. And I don't know, it could be nice too. You could also run any number of other like 3-drops. I think that 3-drop is the most important mana pool to be fulfilled, so you could actually run like a Shadow Weaver instead. Actually, that would probably be better. But overall, it's a solid deck. It's not necessarily as good as the other ones in my opinion, but it's definitely still successful. And if you want to run only one Soulfire, you can also do that as well and put in maybe another Augmented Merchant or another Shadow Weaver. So it's up to you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. All of these decks are very good on a budget. They all only really require 1 legendary, so if you do want to fully commit to the deck, it's not that bad, but also very easily replaced. So hope you guys enjoy the decks, and I hope you guys can play with them.